I'm typically not a huge fan of prequels, as I think they're tough to do well, and we have seen some success with films like Red Dragon, but all too often these movies fail to live up to their original. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is probably one of the better prequels that I've seen in the last 20 years, although it certainly falls short of Mad Max Fury Road. The movie is action packed with a compelling story, terrific acting, excellent cinematography, and it's extremely visually appealing. I'm not sure if it's really possible to do this type of movie much better, but I do think there are several things I would have changed. One is the movie was too long at 2.5 hours runtime, and I get that the movie warned us with the title Saga in the title, and maybe this is just me nitpicking, but I still would have preferred to see this movie around 2 hours. I think it would have been better. One other thing that I would have liked to see different is having the older Furiosa appear sooner. Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays the older Furiosa, isn't shown in the film until about an hour in the movie. Prior to that, we see a younger Furiosa, and I think the storyline went on a little bit too long. Usually when movies do this with a younger character or a younger actor playing the same character, it usually only lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, Anya Taylor-Joy, I thought she did pretty well in the role, although, let's face it, she's simply no Charlize Theron. This, though, really isn't a knock on her performance, as I thought she did great. She just doesn't have the screen presence of Charlize Theron. Oddly, there were several times late in the movie I heard Furiosa speaking, and I actually thought it was Charlize Theron's voice. There was a couple of scenes where I couldn't see, they didn't actually show her face speaking, but you heard the voice, and it sounded to me like Charlize Theron. And I know in the final scene where she takes Immortan Joe's brides, it was Charlize there. Now, one other small issue I have is the relationship between Immortan Joe and Furiosa. I would have liked to see more of a conflict between Furiosa and Immortan Joe. It seems Furiosa just switched her anger from Dementis toward Immortan Joe, and it didn't feel fluid enough. I get that she understood and knew the suffering the women or the brides were going through, but I would have liked to see some sort of conflict between Joe and Furiosa. All this said, this was an excellent movie. The action scenes were top notch, and the film lived up to the high expectations set by prior movies. And it's encouraging to see a franchise focus on quality too, and not just throw out movies every couple of years like Marvel and recently the King Kong and Godzilla franchises trying to make as much money as possible. The fact of the matter around this, though, is Mad Max films, they're really the type of movies that you just can't, you can only make so much of them and really keep them be good. One thing I really liked about the movie is that it also connected well to Fury Road. There's pretty much no questions unanswered as we learn things like how Furiosa lost her arm, her sympathy for Joe's brides, and how she rose to be a Praetorian. The central storyline, of course, in the movie is really around how Furiosa was taken and learned to survive in the wasteland. We also learned why she became so angry and her motivation behind wanting to return home. Overall, I thought the movie did a good job also of giving Immortan Joe the right amount of screen time. He wasn't the central nemesis, but we see him enough that it's satisfying. That said, I wonder if we'll get a Immortan Joe prequel down the road. I think that could be an excellent movie. Of course, they could just do a Mad Max sequel with Tom Hardy. That's probably the route that they would go. I need to also point out that the cinematography and visual effects in this film were fantastic. It's kind of what you come to expect from a movie like this, especially after watching Fury Road. Chris Pratt did a terrific job in this film as Dementis. Furiosa's arch nemesis, and also Tom Burke was excellent as Praetorian Jack, Furiosa's love interest. All around, the supporting characters were good, though, down to the extra war boys. Mad Max is probably best known for its action-packed scenes centered around the war rig scenes, and we saw this in Fury Road with some of the best choreographed action scenes in cinematic history. While the war rig action scene in Furiosa, it doesn't quite live up to Fury Road, it's still a solid set piece. There isn't any significant drop-off or anything. It's just tough to beat Fury Road. I'm really thankful the film also stayed true to its roots and didn't deviate from what made Mad Max Fury Road so great. The movie didn't try and infuse any political messages or soften the environment. It showed the harsh wasteland and the difficulty surviving it. Moreover, we saw how violent and sadistic one has to be to survive. In addition, the movie does a good job with Furiosa and her development. We see Furiosa rise as she overcomes heartache time and time again. First, she watches her mother's death, and then she has to watch Jack, her love interest, be tortured. And this fuels her fury, it fuels her hatred, and she uses it. One thing I hate seeing in these films as well is when the protagonist never has any sort of character arc. And we see this a lot these days, especially when it's a lead character that's feminine. Furiosa is such a solid character, though, because we see her endure the hardship and develop throughout the movie. This movie it's definitely an excellent movie, but it's just not as good as Fury Road. That said, Fury Road is one of the best action films, in my opinion, of all time. So it's like really comparing an NBA All-Star against Michael Jordan. I would definitely recommend watching this movie.